we would like to thank all our metropolitan mayors and district mayors for being with us today, esteemed ambassadors, esteemed consul generals, distinguished mayors from all over the world, representatives of the private sector and NGOs, academicians, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Marmara Urban Forum. Yes, distinguished guests, I will be your MC for today. I'm Sevinç Satıroğlu, and I will be sharing all the details of this 3-day long forum with you. Yes, we have distinguished mayors from many foreign countries as well, and Marmara Urban Forum is really an international local government forum, and we have participation from 25 countries, and we would like to welcome them in their own language.
Mayors and dear representatives from the world countries, welcome to Istanbul and Marmara Urban Forum. Welcome. The Marmara Urban Forum will last for 3 days with its 3 cities producing solutions. It is being held for the first time this year. It will continue to be organized every 2 years. It is an international urban forum. It is bringing together all the shareholders who play a key role in the design, transformation, and administration of the cities. There will be 50 sessions in total in 7 different halls. There will be a total of 250 speakers from 25 countries. Welcome again. Now we will start the Marmara Urban Forum with a very spacious show. Evet, değerli misafirler, az önce söylediğimiz gibi.
Yes, distinguished guests, as we've just said, Marmara Urban Forum will host a very special show with which we'll start our program. Our guest is the Music for Peace Foundation, and first we'd like to share an introductory video with you, which will be followed by the Children's and Youth Orchestra with maestros Felis Tsaryu.
Her şey müzik tutkunu bir vizyonerin, mimar Mehmet Selim Baki'nin hayali için ilk adımı atmasıyla başladı. Eşi, akademisyen Yeliz Baki'nin de tüm zamanını verdiği Barış İçin Müzik projesini hayata geçirdiğinde yıl 2005'ti. Amacı tüm çocuklara sanata katılma hakkını sağlamaktı. Bu yolda seçtiği müzik, bir sanat formu olmanın ötesinde birlik, dayanışma ve uyum demekti. Çocuklara bu değerleri müzik aracılığıyla yaşatmak, uyuşmazlıkların karşısına anlayışı, ortak bir hedefe doğru birlikte hareket etmeyi ve en büyük amaç olan barışı koymak demekti. 2011'de Barış İçin Müzik Vakfı adıyla kurumsallaşan proje, daha çok çocuğa ulaşabilmek için 2015'te çalışmalarını ülke çapına yayma kararı aldı. İzleyen yıllar, Adalar, Bursa ve İzmir'de kurduğu işbirlikleriyle benzer projeleri başlattı. Bugün bu çalışmalar Türkiye'nin 4 farklı noktasında sürüyor. Boş dersliklerde yaratılan küçük zamanlarla başlayan bu barış projesi, bugüne kadar 6500'e yakın çocuğun yaşamına dokundu. Barış için müzik bugün coşkuyla, hevesle ve sevgiyle müzik yapan bir orkestralar ve korolar sistemi. Kuruluşundan bu yana dokunduğu her çocukla büyüyen, büyüdükçe daha çok çocuğa dokunan bir kardeşlik ortamı Barış için müzik. Yetişen çocuklarımızın bazıları profesyonel müzisyen olacak. Bazıları belki hayatta kendine başka yollar çizecek. Ama kazandıkları birliktelik, uyum ve dayanışma ruhuyla müziğin birleştirici gücünü hep içlerinde taşıyacaklarını umuyoruz. Siz de bu barış yolculuğunda bizimle yürümek isterseniz www.barışiçinmuzik.org adresinden çalışmalarımıza destek olabilirsiniz. Şimdi biz susalım, müzik konuşsun.
Evet, huzurlarınızda
The foundation for
ve sahneye büyük alkışlar.
Music for Peace will be on stage with you with a great round of applause. 100 children will be with us.
Evet sayın şefimiz lütfen.
Yes, dear conductor, we would like to invite you here, please. Thank you for all the value you've added to our children. Thank you. Yes, distinguished guests, we witnessed what our children and youth can do when they are given the opportunity. We saw a live example of that on stage, and we experienced pleasurable moments. And we would also like to once again remind you that the Music for Peace Foundation needs your support, so please don't forget them from now on. Yes, so as our children were on stage, they gave us a message as well, and they emphasized one of the main themes of the Marmara Urban Forum. And they said, leave the children a world. So now, all together, we are at the Marmara Urban Forum so we can leave a better world for the children. Let's take a closer look at Marmara Urban Forum.
Tabii Marmara Urban Forum aslında büyük bir başkent.
Of course, Marmara Urban Forum is being held in Istanbul, which has become host to civilizations for thousands of years. Now let's take a closer look at Istanbul before we start the Marmara Urban Forum.
Evet İstanbul kendi renkleriyle sesi
So, with her own colors and voice, Istanbul is a very particular city, and it is hosting the Marmara Urban Forum. And let us also share the details of Marmara Urban Forum. The Marmara Municipalities Union has brought us together for Marmara Urban Forum, and they've been holding many activities, both training and in any areas that contribute to governance. And Marmara Urban Forum will become a brand for Istanbul and is planned to be held biannually. This isn't just a local forum for Istanbul. Today, we're hosting mayors from 25 countries around the world, and we will also discuss all local governance systems, and the forum concerns all stakeholders such that the design, transformation, of the cities and all stakeholders playing an important role in that transformation are here, and they will be here for 3 days. And we will reconvene every 2 years from now on to contribute to the development of cities and the world itself. So, urban services and urban management, we will assess different approaches to these two topics. You're now in the main hall, and we also have 7 other halls in which sessions will be held for 3 days. So we will have the main session in a while. After the inauguration, we will invite you to the 7 separate rooms. Now, the main theme of today is cities developing solutions. So we will be here in 7 different rooms with 50 different sessions throughout the 3 days, and we will hear from 250 speakers. And we are expecting 3,000 national and international visitors to the Marmara Urban Forum. So let's look at who is present, which countries are participating. The USA, almost all European countries, Japan, India, Hong Kong, Balkan countries, Canada, African countries, and Middle East. We host very valuable guests from 25 countries. Also, the topics in the 7 separate halls. And I see benefit in underlining the fact that while Marmara Urban Forum was being created, the topics were created in line with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. For example, environment, global warming, digitalization, digital world. Those will be the main topics. And we created 12 articles: environment and climate change, urban technologies and innovation, mobility, urban infrastructure, housing, migration, cities networks, social inclusion, public spaces, and governance. Of course, we also have some special sessions. You can see them in the programs in your hand, and I will give you a different method to follow the program as well. But for our special sessions, they will be public sessions: local diplomacy, Istanbul Marmara, and habitat will be the topics of some important meetings held in these special sessions. Of course, we are talking about a digital world and our indispensable cell phones and games. For local governments, we want Marmara Urban Forum to be more effective and more touchable. So we will have the game Play Marmara. We will play it with our local administrators and mayors. They will try to solve a city's problems and discuss them by touching, and they will manage, well, we will all together manage a virtual city. For 3 days, the Play Marmara game will continue. We will also have 6 separate exhibitions, and another element, as you know, in the global agenda in recent years is migration. And we will be screening our movie called Guest. And of course, we talked about our youth. We also have a space created called the PhD Bazaar, where you can visit some dissertations. So we've talked about digitalization and technology. Of course, we can do everything on our smartphones and cell phones now. So why not access Marmara Urban Forum on our cell phones? Let us now show you how.
Evet, uygulamayı iOS ve Android cep
So the app is available on iOS and Android, and you can follow the program throughout the day also make some comments and ask questions. And I urge you all now to download the Marmara Urban Forum app on your smartphones and tablets. Yes, distinguished guests, as you know, we've talked about the environment and global warming. The Marmara Urban Forum has an environmentalist outlook in realizing its sessions and meetings. So we must do something that touches the environment. Of course, being together is very enjoyable and very efficient, but unfortunately there is an amount of electricity we're consuming and we're leaving a carbon footprint in nature each time. So Marmara Urban Forum will be cleaning our carbon footprint for the next 3 days, and for it to continue that cleaning, we are creating a Marmara Urban Forum forest. We, as you know, usually offer a plaque to our speakers in thanks, but instead of that plaque, we have considered gifting our speakers a tree. So every speaker will have a tree planted to their name, and those trees will grow and continue to erase our carbon footprint in the Marmara Urban Forum forest. And for a sustainable environment, well, let us emphasize the importance of trees for a sustainable environment, but that's not all. We also will not kill trees to give paper certificates, but to save trees, we will issue digital certificates, and our speakers and panelists will receive their certificates online. And with all the social responsibility, Marmara Forum will continue for the next 3 days with those responsibilities in mind. So, before inviting our speakers for the opening speeches, I would like to mention a group who has exerted a great effort for Marmara Urban Forum and who have worked to leave that lovely world to the children, as they've said, the Marmara Municipalities Union team. I would like to request a round of applause for them for their efforts in organizing this meeting. And the distinguished leaders of this team, the Secretary General, Mr. Cemil Arslan, I would like to invite him to the stage to deliver his speech. Welcome, sir. Thank you very much. While watching the children, İsmet Özen's poem came to mind. I would ask the interpreters not to bother because it's difficult to translate even into Turkish. Distinguished presidents, mayors, consuls general, panelists, executive committee, members of the advisory committee, distinguished participants, students, members of the press. Organized by the Marmara Municipality Union, this is the first Marmara Urban Forum, and I'd like to welcome you to our very first forum. Well, before all the formal requirements and formalities, the MC requested an applause for our colleagues, but I deemed that insufficient because, as you know, there's great effort behind all of these events. For 2 years, we have people who have been working to make this an international sustainable event. I call them the Golden Ants, my dear colleagues at MMU. I would like to thank my Golden Ants and request a privileged and strong round of applause for them. Thank you very much. Welcome to Maruf. And we expect not just participation, but effective participation. That is your criticism. As far as I know, criticism has no negative effects on human health that have at least yet been identified. So we expect your full criticism. Please don't hold back. I won't go into detail of the program. The MC mentioned the apps, etc. Like people, institutions have an age of maturity. I represent the MMU today, but there's 45 years of experience, labor, and tradition behind the MMU. The recently passed Ahmet Enön, who initiated the union, and our first chairperson, Erol Köse, who is also with us today, and from Hasan Akgün to Kadir Topbaş, from Recep Altepe to our present chairperson, Tahir Büyükakın, all the MMU chairs and mayors. Mr. Selahattin Yıldırım'dan and my predecessor Züver Çetinkaya, all the secretaries general and all the staff at MMU have shown extraordinary effort. I'd like to thank them all and wish peace upon those past and healthy and long life to those with us. All those who have supported us, our universities, consulates, CSOs, professional chambers, municipalities, sponsor organizations, and our critics who always force us to pull ourselves together. We'd like to thank you. Our motto is Cities Developing Solutions. And Marif, in that sense, is a demonstration of our belief that lighting a candle instead of cursing the darkness is a more humanitarian and more logical solution. Cities can not only be defined by rules of engineering, etc., but it is created as a result of the politics and economic decisions of countless people. Spaces, cities, local governments, migration, development, etc., such dynamics define the space itself, but also the relation between spaces. By borrowing from Rumi, I'd like to say, however many words there are for yesterday, now we must say new things. And this forum is one of the things that we are doing in trying to say something new. On the other hand, the world is rapidly changing. Time is flowing fast, and the world is evolving at a faster pace. To adapt to changing conditions and to be prepared to risk is one of the most important duties of local governments. They have to manage this change, and they have to adapt to the change in a constant flow, but on the other hand, be prepared for risk. The diversifying public services highlights the importance of local governments. Disasters such as earthquakes also show what important actors local governments are in a very dangerous and horrifying way, but nonetheless. But it's not just local governments, it's democratic local governments that we're mentioning here. It's not just in the relation between central administration and local administrations, but the relations between different layers of local administrations and the relations between local administration and the citizens. It means the practice of democratic laws. The elected local governors must consider the will of all their constituents without discrimination. Interdisciplinary and intersectoral relations are paid attention to, and knowledge-based and an open system must be established before international relations can be conducted, and the same is true for municipalities. We all want a clean, safe, culturally vibrant, and non-discriminatory, efficient, and effective public services. We want to live in such cities. This also requires the elimination of cronyism and patronage in local administrations. Transport crises are growing stronger, which is leading to turmoil and some back and forth and opening and closing policies all around the world. There are positives and negatives to life, and municipalities have to create solutions by considering the positive and the negative together. With those who feel at the very edge of life and those who are at the very center of it. The optimistic and pessimistic, that is the meeting space. The cities are meeting spaces for them. It is given life and it gives life. So, we have to create organizations that are strong with people of merit. So, in summary, as David Harvey said, what type of city we want, what type of social relations, what type of relationship with nature we want, what lifestyles and technological and aesthetical values, these cannot be handled separately. Humans need the wisdom of others and their shortcoming in a way. And their shortcomings are further deepened like a deep wound when they do not meet those who are not like themselves. So, we must try to create a city of diversity that shares the same life in the same city. I'd like to conclude with a quote with an inspiration from Aristoteles. At international, national, and local levels, those who create policies, the decision makers, the administrators, may be our loved ones and friends, but the truth is a closer friends, and we must never sacrifice it for personal friendships. Thank you, sir. Now, I would like to invite up Turan Konak, chairperson of Local Administrations Union.
Hoş geldiniz Sayın Konak.
Welcome, Mr. Konak. Esteemed chairperson, esteemed participants, esteemed mayors, first of all, I would like to hope that this forum organized by the Marmara Municipalities Union will prove to be auspicious, and I would like to cordially greet you all. Now, the Environment and Urbanization Ministry has been restructured like many of our other ministries, and in the scope of this, the Financial Administration Affairs has also been transferred over to our ministry. And of course, we were assigned some new tasks as part of this. So from urban planning to infrastructure and transportation and urban transformation to smart cities and eco-friendly cities, and from vertical cities to value-creating cities, we have many goals. Now, distinguished participants, as you know, local governments are established to meet the common needs of the public, and building, infrastructure, transportation are some of our many activity areas. And we have 72 million citizens living in the borders of various municipalities. So 94% of the entire population of Turkey is living within municipal borders. When we take a different perspective on this, about more than 70% of the Turkish population are living within metropolitan municipalities. So as municipalities, we must understand that we are the main actor in delivering services. Distinguished participants, as I mentioned at the beginning of my speech, local governments do transform in time in accordance with the needs, and to be able to better comprehend the present situation, we need to look back. When we look at our Republican history, one of the first legislations was prepared for local governments. And one of the most important laws is law number 1580, and it came into force in 1938, and it is one of the laws that has stayed in force for the longest time. And after 74 years, it was then replaced with law number 5393. And of course, with the free market economy becoming more widespread in the world, the municipalities have also transformed, and many services that were rendered by the central government were then handed over to local governments. And our country also adapted to this wind of change across the world, and there were many legislations in this area. So in meeting common needs, our local governments have become the main actors. And we are at a time where technological advancements are very rapid, and the speed of transformation is at levels we could not have dreamt of 50 years ago. And also, migration has increased a lot, not just between countries, but within a country's borders as well. And our local governments need to adapt to the changing circumstances and improve its rendering of services. And governance, a concept which will be discussed as part of this meeting, is also an important concept here. And we need to have a participative, transparent, accountable, fair approach to all our services. Years ago, our municipalities used to discuss how they were going to collect garbage, but now we are discussing how to generate power from the waste that is collected. And while we were talking about the asphalting and how we should build pavements, now we are talking about technological aspects. So change is happening, and change is very rapid, and we are trying to adapt to this change. And also, our cities with a migration influx are also focusing on how to provide more services to a wider community. And the motto of this forum is Cities Developing Solutions. And all the discussion topics are very important for all local governments and public authorities. So in this framework, our General Directorate, to serve as a guide for our local governments and to enable cooperation between municipalities, we are focusing on sharing best practices between different local governments and focusing on capacity building activities as well, so better services can be rendered by our local governments. So in this way, we will be creating strong local governments, and the public will also be more content with the services they receive. Efficient management of services and efficient presentation of services, preparation for disasters, transportation, smart cities, migration, urban infrastructure, housing, social inclusion, urban technologies and innovation, local development are all very important topics for local governments. And along with all of this, especially in terms of finding resolutions for legislation-based issues, we try to create workshops and build working groups so we can find resolutions for the challenges you may be facing. And our chairperson tries to have field trips to observe everything on site so we can provide better solutions. And today among us, we also have very valuable academicians, science people, and experienced local authorities that can serve as a guiding light for us. And I believe that all these discussions will provide contributions in our search for resolutions. And as the Ministry of Environment and Urbanization, we are an institution that our local governments collaborate closely with, and I would like to state that we are always willing to collaborate with them as well. I would like to thank everyone who took part in organizing this event, particularly our Secretary General, our chair, all the employees of the Marmara Municipalities Union, and everyone who put effort into this organization, along with all the participants that are with us today. I'd like to cordially greet you all. Thank you very much, Mr. Turan Konak. And now I would like to invite the chair of the Marmara Municipalities Union, Mr. Tahir Akın.
Hoş geldiniz efendim.
Welcome, sir.
Sayın Genel Müdürüm,
Distinguished Director General, esteemed mayors, academicians, students, members of the press, to create a city and therefore a vision of civilization, you've come to our forum from all across the world. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to each and every one of you. Hacı Bayram said, in constructing a city, people actually construct themselves amidst the stone and cement. Whatever is in your heart is visualized as a city. Those who have a heart of stone live in cities of stone, but those whose hearts are full of love, they live in a city of roses. How are the cities that we've constructed? In fact, how are we? What are we like? What is in our hearts? What is seen in our cities? Is it stone or love? The facade of our cities answer all these questions. It is unfortunately not possible to talk about a rose garden. Modern understanding of urbanization has lost its raison d'etre in all its aspects. The relationship of a person with themselves, with those around them, and with the whole world is going through a great test in urban areas. Yes, we produce so much, we consume so much, and we go from one place to another anytime we desire. Iron roads, waters, and air, we travel over them. With phones in our hands, we access the information of existence. Our schools, our workplaces, our homes are the most comfortable ever in human history. Whereas all this is supposed to boost our happiness, the gross national happiness product in cities and urban areas is constantly decreasing. Today we will talk planning, we will talk infrastructure and transport. We will talk about urban industrial transformation. We will discuss the conditions that will make our cities unique, and we will also talk about how technology will make our cities smarter. It is now time to seek a new way to renew our contract with our environment. We will assess services that must reach every layer of society and every individual. We will focus less on buildings and cars and make more space for people. We will work on increasing participation in governance and the integration of local governance. Effective use of resources and transparency will also be issues discussed. For cities to generate more value, we will develop a common mind. I wholeheartedly believe that we will cover considerable ground in all these topics, and when we do realize those, we will have taken an important step towards a new city and a new urban understanding. Mehmet the Conqueror said that the people, well, we must conquer the hearts of the people in cities we build. So how are we to conquer the hearts? I think that is the fundamental question in all issues. And that is the main problem of this forum that requires a solution. Once that is answered, we will have opened the doors to a new civilization for humanity. We live in different cities under different conditions, but we all breathe the same air, drink the same water, and live under the same sky. So our destinies are intertwined. This destiny of our cities is also the destiny of the world. This destiny is an inseparable whole. The production techniques developing in the East, in the West, and the migration in the East, the plastics in the oceans, the carbon monoxide in the air, cars occupying our streets, the desolate and destitute, the poverty-stricken, fish eating plastics, billions seeking psychosocial support are our common destiny and common issue. Either we shape this destiny all together as humanity, or we will be left to live an airless, waterless, and colorless life as minute details. This forum aims to contribute to the destiny of humanity from Turkey. Our intent is good, and therefore we have all the belief that the outcome will also be good. What must actually be done here is to give a new voice to the orientation of the world and to sincerely discuss issues and find solutions to them. And that is the motto of our forum cities, seeking solutions. We are here to seek and to lead the destiny of humanity. Those who have come from near and far, those who have attached importance to this meeting, to all our friends, I thank each and every one of you and salute you with respect and affection. We would like to thank Mr. Tahir Büyükakın. Before moving on to our opening panel, we have the giant hashtags that you see on either side of me. Of course, we talk about the digital age and social interaction. If you could use the hashtag Maruf19 on social media for your posts, we would be very appreciative. Now we have a video from Maymun Ahmad Sharif. We will hear their message from UN Habitat.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, friends, warm greetings to you from the headquarters of UN Habitat, the United Nations Human Settlements Program in Nairobi, Kenya. I would like to congratulate Marmara Municipalities Union for organizing this landmark urban forum with the theme, Cities Developing Solutions, and I understand the 12 themes have all been selected to be in line with the Sustainable Development Goals or SDGs. I'm delighted to hear this is the first urban forum to be organized in Turkey. I would also like to welcome you to the first day of Urban October, which is a month of events designed to raise awareness about the challenges and opportunities for urbanization. I am so glad you have chosen this month to hold this meeting. We will celebrate World Habitat Day this coming Monday and World Cities Day at the end of the month, so please let us know about your other planned activities. Turkey is and has been for a long time an active partner for UN Habitat. I would like to recall Habitat 2 in Istanbul in 1996, which was a milestone for UN efforts to promote sustainable urban development. I understand there will be a special session on the legacy of Habitat conferences from Habitat 1 to Habitat 3, and the speakers of these sessions are all veterans of Habitat conferences. Turning to more recent events, I'm deeply grateful for Turkey's co-leadership of the Infrastructure, Cities and Local Action, or ICLA, track for the Climate Action Summit in New York. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank the First Lady of Turkey for her patronage and support for the Zero Waste campaign. I would particularly like to appreciate the President's reference to UN Habitat in his speech at the summit. As a former mayor of Istanbul, the President understands that city climate action is critical, and UN Habitat is happy to work with the government to take forward the initiative launched at the summit. UN Habitat is currently implementing the Global Future Cities program under the UK Foreign and Commonwealth Prosperity Fund that include 3 cities in Turkey: Istanbul, Ankara, and Bursa. The program aims to deliver targeted intervention in 19 cities across 10 countries to encourage sustainable development, increase prosperity, whilst alleviating high levels of urban poverty. UN Habitat is leading the establishment of the UN Youth Center in Istanbul. It sounds like there will be a huge amount of activities going on for the next 3 days. I wish the forum success, and I'm looking forward to hearing about its result. Thank you very much.
Evet, bu mesajın ardından Marmara
Yes, following this message, we will now be starting to talk about solutions and create solutions at the Marmara Urban Forum. And before I announce our moderator, I would like to refer to last week's earthquake, because we all have sad memories about the big earthquake in 99. So last week's event once again reminded us of that. And how are we going to deal with the threat of such a disaster with such a highly populated city? These are important topics, and our esteemed moderator that I will now announce, and also it is very special for me because he is the reason that I also embarked on this career journey. And at the 99 earthquake, he prepared special files about earthquakes. He had actually prepared them before the earthquake of 99, and he was looking into how Istanbul could prepare for a potential disaster. And I am honored to invite our expert journalist, Oğuz Haksever, on stage, please. Welcome. I guess the first day I came to visit you, we could have never imagined being on such a stage together. It is a great source of content for me. I'll ask you to take your seats, and I would like to invite our guests, Mayor of Kocaeli Municipality and the Chair of the Marmara Municipalities Union, Tahir Büyükakın. Welcome once again, Mr. Büyükakın. Another panelist, Mayor of Bursa, Ali Nur Aktaş. Welcome, Mr. Aktaş. Welcome, sir. And we had said we have foreign guests, UNDP Turkey Mukim representative Claudia Tomas, please. Mayor of Sakarya, Mr. Ekrem Yüce, please. Welcome, Mr. Yüce. Mayor of Tekirdağ, Kadir Albayrak, please. Another one of our guests from abroad, Metropolis Secretary General Octavia Delaware, please. And Mayor of Balıkesir Metropolitan Municipality, Mr. Yücel Yılmaz. Welcome, sir. And I would like to leave the floor to Mr. Oğuz Haksever. I found the button, yes. The International Urban Forum of the Marmara Municipalities Union, Marmara Urban Forum, has begun, and this is the first session. Maybe I should make an introduction. And I did have a presentation, actually, on PowerPoint. Now, the umbrella organization's theme or motto is cities developing solutions. And the topic of this session is the urban vision of the 21st century. So what is the connection between the two, I thought to myself, and I conducted some research. And I found the 21st century vision of the municipality of New York. And it was quite interesting. We could change the slide now. Yes, you can see it here. It is an image that isn't really reminiscent of New York. We see the building by Zaha Hadid, and this is a former railway road, and they turned it into an open-air arboretum. But as you can see, it says Global Vision Urban Action below. The 21st century vision of New York is in line with the UN goals. So basically, the global goals announced by the UN in 2015 have been taken completely by the New York municipality and added to their vision. That is something that really caught my attention. So this should be a widespread approach, I believe. But the city of New York has taken the UN goals and internalized it completely and added it to their vision. And so what are these goals? Well, they are exactly the same as the UN goals. Let's have a look at them. I brought these from the website of the New York municipality. So putting an end to poverty, putting an end to hunger, healthy living, quality of life, equal opportunity in education, gender equality. This is how it goes, basically. We can move to the next slide. And the priorities in the list are also very interesting. I mean, putting an end to poverty is #1 in the vision of New York as well. And putting an end to hunger is #2. And these are the priorities of our municipalities as well. Before, these would not be the responsibilities of local governments, but now they have become priorities of municipalities. Remember all the promises made during the campaigns in the most recent local election. And this is the connection between this session's title and the motto of this forum. And we can skip these slides. Yes. Now, I believe that our mayors will touch up on this subject, so global vision and urban vision, but there is also a very current risk and a vision about this that needs to be in place, and that's deprem in the Marmara area, both because of the fault lines that go through the Marmara Sea, which is in the midst of the Marmara region, and both because of the structure of this area. This is an important issue, and yes, I must criticize our city as well. But yes, Istanbul was struck with the earthquake, but the earthquake actually took place in the Marmara Sea. So yes, Istanbul is a priority, but there are other people who live in this region outside of Istanbul as well. So I'm sure it is important for those areas as well. And this very current threat, I believe, is very important, and I hope our mayors will refer to this. And as I end my words, I'd just like to make a note of this. The North Anatolia fault line that goes through Marmara has a twin almost in California, and on the 4th of July, they had an earthquake of 6.4 scale, and for the past 25 years, it is the first time they had such an earthquake. 20 million people were impacted. There are damages, but there are no casualties. And there were a lot of measures taken. So I had a look at what these measures were. And I'm sorry, I am taking up some of your time here, but I do think it is important since we have so many local government representatives. And this is an app introduced by the Los Angeles mayor. They started using it in 2018. And on smartphones, they have an app that provides an alarm before the earthquake comes. As you know, there are about 3 to 10 seconds before the earthquake that we can be informed of it. And if you can just count to 10, you can imagine how much time there is and how many lives can be saved. It is quite expensive. It is $250 million. And even if it worked, as you know, all the cellular communication was blocked as soon as the earthquake happened. So even if we had bought this app, we wouldn't be able to use it probably. So it's quite striking that since 1999, in the past 20 years, we haven't even been able to improve our cellular communication system. And that's it from me. I'll leave the floor to Tahir Büyükakın, and you will be able to ask questions. Now, I know that it is very hard to have a very rigid discipline in such sessions, but I am planning to have 2 rounds of 5 minutes each, and the floor is yours, sir. Thank you very much. Well, I actually gave a lot of thought to what I should say while I'm presenting today. And I thought having a different presentation would be better because we have a deeper problem. Our approach to the issue. I mean, we have an issue with the communication, the relationship between humans. So if we don't focus on that, I believe we would be ignoring a lot of things. I would like to remind you about some facts. And I mean, we should break the mold and then focus on solutions. Now, I want to show you the situation of the world. I need to go closer to read the numbers. I'm sorry. For example, in the year 2000, the number of cities with more than 1 million population was 371. In 2018, that was 548. And in 2030, 706 cities will have more than 1 million in population. And 10 million plus population megacants. In 1990, it was 10. In 2014, it was 28. So whether or not you accept it doesn't matter. This is where the world is going to. I'll try to be fast, but 5 minutes may not be enough. But this is important. It gives us a format. In year 2000, if people were covering 1 unit of space in 2030, it will be double the amount. These are facts that we need to understand to be able to plan. So when you have a projection for 2030, yearly 96 million housing is required. That's what you need to produce. In Turkey, yearly, this figure is 900,000. So without considering these figures, you can't imagine the future and you can't say anything about local governance. And there are 821 million people who have a threat of hunger. There are 258 million people who are part of the migration influx. You can be the best local government you are. If you are on the route of any of these migration influxes, it becomes very challenging for you. And hate crimes and marginalizing crimes are increasing. And the amount of vehicles in 2018, if we are talking about one vehicle, in 2050, it will be 2.5. So think of it like 1 billion to 2.5 billion vehicles. The amount of casualties in traffic, 1.2 million people are losing their lives every year. And the amount of carbon monoxide that is created by cities, well, 71 to 76% of the global carbon emission is taking place in cities. We have an issue with the way we understand urbanization, and the amount of potable water is 0.5%. Normally, it was 1%, but it is going down towards 0.5%. And the amount of waste generated in cities daily, 5 million tons across the world. Every day, we are creating this much waste. And death caused by environmental pollution, yearly 3 million people are losing their lives because of this. And plastics. On the Piran Mountains per meter square, 365 particles are falling. And yearly 8 million tons of plastic is mixing into the oceans. And the amount of fish that are consuming plastics have been increased by 50%. The global water level between 1901 to 2000, there was an increase of 19 centimeters, but for until 20 2065, there will be an additional 24 to 30 centimeters, it is projected. So some cities will be covered with water. And with climate change, by the end of 21st century, 60% of the wheat farms will be destroyed. And the amount of people who lost their lives in disasters and natural disasters, 8 million people lost their lives. And there is unemployment rates between 10 to 45% across various cities. And in the upcoming period, in the next 25 years, 47% of the existing professions will disappear, and there will be new professions introduced. We will face new unemployment challenges. And we have other problems as well. I mean, it's not just the figures that we have already mentioned, but for example, the people who live in the cities, because of lack of movement, we are facing a problem of obesity, diabetes. It's the disease of modern people who live in modern cities because they don't move. They're sitting, they're driving, they don't move at all. So these are the diseases of people who live in modern cities. And we forgot to write about blood pressure. It's the same thing. And 270 million people across the world are using antidepressants. 7 hours and 15 minutes of spare time. Sorry, of our spare time, we spend 7 hours on the internet and 2 hours on social media out of these 7 hours. And with the increase in digitalization, there's a huge increase in cybercrimes. So this is our situation. So I wanted to show you our situation very briefly, and there is something wrong. That is why I tried to show you these numbers. I mean, there's something wrong with this design. Yes, we have built a lot of things, but the ends didn't meet. That's what we need to be thinking about. So it's not just about publishing declarations about the rights of city dwellers or, Mr. O's talked about setting the goals that New York City did, but it's not about that. We have a problem with our approach, our perspective on the world, our perspective on the universe has a problem. And if we don't resolve that, all the cities we build will be problematic. This controller isn't working, but okay, what is the resolution? Now, don't expect me to pull up a list of solutions. We need to shift our perspective. I think this is a very good way of explaining it. An image can explain something you couldn't explain in pages. I mean, a fish in one fishbowl cannot go into the other fishbowl even if he waited for years. But that is what we need to do. We need to be seeking something new. The urbanization concept has gone bankrupt across the world. It's not just in Turkey. It's all across the world. I'm sure we have urban planners among us as well. And the urban planners are these days discussing where did we go wrong? I mean, why are we providing municipality services? Why are there public authorities? Why are there municipalities? It is all for human beings, but we forgot our raison d'être. Why are there teachers? It's for students. Why are there schools? It's for students. But why would an institution forget its raison d'être? The municipalities exist so they can serve the people living in cities, the city dwellers. And our mayor mentioned they exist so they can meet the common needs of the people. And as I mentioned at the beginning in my opening speech, when I referred to Hacı Bayram, when people are building cities between the stone and the soil, people are constructing themselves as well while they're constructing the city. And whatever you have in your heart is what you create. So first of all, we need to change our mindset and seek a new approach. The presentation controller is not working. Okay, what we need to do is search, question the things we find, and continue our search. I believe that this will is more important. If we really review our issues once again, the relationship between human and human, the relationship between human and the city, the relationship between human and society, this needs to be reevaluated and reorganized. It is only then that we can actually build cities free of challenges. If we go back to the very beginning this morning, if we go back to the children, we need to leave them a world where they can be happy. Those children were very happy this morning, but they were happy only as they were playing music. They need to be happy when they go out on the streets as well. They need to feel safe. They need to be peaceful. So we need to design this correctly. So we really need to shoulder the responsibility, go on a search, find, question, and rebuild a world for our children. Thank you.
Çok teşekkürler.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And something I'd like to say, I had said at the beginning that you will have a chance to ask questions. Now, how are you going to ask questions? Well, this forum has an app. And through that app, you can address your questions to the speakers. And of course, they will go through some sort of review, not censor, but they will be reviewed, and then they will be conveyed to the panelists. And our mayor's speech was a little pessimistic, yes, but he told us about the current state of the world. And truly, municipalities have or municipalities need to take on more responsibility. And the mayor said that the design was wrong. So when he said that, I'm wondering, was he referring to maybe decentralization? I don't know. And I wanted to refer to that for our foreign guests. And he said that urbanization has gone bankrupt all around the world. And not just in Turkey, in many parts of the world, these cities are handling societal problems more than central governments. Now, I will move to our foreign guests as well. But before that, we want to hear another one of our mayors. And Mr. Mayor, you may have made a note of this. When you talk about the design is wrong, are you actually referring to decentralization here? Maybe you could answer that in your second round. And I don't know if it's okay if I go according to the population ranking, but now we'll go with the mayor of Bursa, Mr. Alinur Aktaş. The floor is yours. I hope my population calculations were accurate. Okay. The microphone, whichever one you wish. Thank you very much, Mr. Haksever. Esteemed General Director, esteemed mayors, esteemed foreign guests, and dear brothers and sisters and members of the press, I would like to cordially greet you all. We are here together for the first Marlborough Urban Forum organized by the Marlborough Municipalities Union, and this forum that will be organized biannually, I hope will prove to be very auspicious for all of us. Now, of course, we will be sharing our experiences in local governance in various settings throughout these 3 days. Now, cities, of course, are areas where people leave a lot of traces socioculturally, economically, politically, and people create things, build civilizations, and create a lot of culture. And they are areas of settlement. And the cities have reflexes just like people as well. The cities have memories, and whatever these memories are focusing on, that's how the development in that city takes place. And cities are also defining the phenomenon of globalism these days. And when we look at the city dwellers, with urbanization and an increase in populations, with the people migrating from villages, we see that the number of city dwellers are increasing day by day. But urbanization shouldn't just be considered as an increase in a population. Urbanization is economical, political, social, and cultural. I believe that's how we need to handle it. And urbanization is also a process of social change, and the people who move to the cities have shifts in their perspective, in their worldviews. And urbanization needs to be planned according to the cultural changes cities create in people's lives. And local governments involve all areas of life from birth to death, and services need to not only develop the city, but should support the city dwellers in all the changes they are going through. And the variety of services are increasing day by day. And the restructuring in local governments recently has led the municipalities to focus on a vast range of areas, from protecting historical heritage to education and many other areas. And the local governments have gained more importance with innovative and democratic approaches. Of course, a city also needs to be an attraction center. And as Mr. Mayor Tahir used to be a governor as well, he has seen both sides of the coin, and that's why he portrayed the current state of the world. And it did seem a little pessimistic, but we must admit that a lot of people are attracted to the notion of living in the cities. Currently, 60% of the world population are living in cities, and by 2065, the projection is that it will be 75%. And the responsibilities of local authorities are increasing in line with the increasing population. And of course, the challenges are increasing in cities with this increasing population as well. And with the developments in technology, our solutions are better, and we have a lot of intersections with the smart city concept. And this concept provides a bright solution to all the issues that is faced in today's cities. And after this local election, we created a new department in our municipality, the Smart Cities and Innovation Department, and we also got a grant from the UK of 2.3 million pounds. And with this department, what we are trying to emphasize is that the smart city concept needs to help all our services, from waste to transportation, to utilize the digital technology that is available today. And we should also listen to the city dwellers and take their opinions into account as well. The human factor should never be ignored, because all of these services are services that are being rendered to them. And there is an increasing expectation in the quality of services provided by municipality, and we need to find an efficient way of managing this complex network. But while doing that, there is no pause, because cities are active 24/7. So all we need is accurate planning. The cities with new insights and new technologies need to transform their operations and services for a high quality of or the cities that provide a high quality of life and a good climate will definitely be ranking higher in terms of being attraction centers. We need to use social technologies as well, so we can have more efficient communication with the dwellers. And despite the limited budgets and resources, the goals always need to be high, and challenges need to be transformed into opportunities. Of course, each city has a different potential, so we need to analyze our data well and provide solutions according to that. Owning information is not enough. Being able to evaluate that information is what counts. So with the developing technology, we need to develop efficient methods in doing this as well. And one of the facts that everyone accepts today is that there is a huge mindset change in local governments. And as we all know, the local government understanding in our country is transforming greatly through our president, Recep Tayyip Erdogan. We know that he was a mayor formerly in Istanbul, and we know that there were mayors that used to be interrogated just because they added 3 bricks to a mosque or something. But thank God, these days, we have an understanding of local governments that provide services in all our areas. Well, from those days to the present, we always raise the bar in our understanding of local governments, and with the leadership of our qualified mayors, we have turned municipality services into legendary services. And we have a lot more to do in terms of building our cities and enriching our cities. And as you know, we have the 2023 target, the 100th year of the foundation of the Republic of Turkey, and then we have the 250 and the 2050 and 2078 goals as well. So we really need to introduce significant projects for these goals. So for the first round, I wanted to provide a general approach. In the second round, I would like to focus on Bursa. And once again, I hope our meeting will prove to be an auspicious one. I'd like to leave the floor to Mr. Oğuz Haksever.
Thank you, sir. By the way, cities have common problems across the world. The first problem is insufficient budget at a rate of 50%. The second important problem is, again, the weight of central administration and sharp rules at 38%. Third is, interestingly, partisanship. This is the outcome of a global study, by the way, and followed by political independence, and converging responsibilities have a share of 34%. They have such issues as well. Now, we will continue to hear from our mayors, but let us also, at this stage, give the floor to our international guests. The UNDPA permanent resident to Turkey, that is what is meant, I believe, that he resides here. Let us hear from him, especially the design error cities that was mentioned by previous panelists. Is that a global issue, I wonder? The Kocaeli Metropolitan Mayor mentioned the fact. Has urbanization gone bankrupt in the world? If you could also touch on these issues as well, we would be delighted. Mr. Claudio Tomasi, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much. First of all, for the invitation to the Marmara Municipal Union and Union of Municipalities. And let me address a couple of issues as you requested. Actually, you have made my life much easy because you already introduced, dear moderator, the concept of the Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals in your introduction. And maybe in these first 5 minutes, I will focus exactly on that. How does the urban agenda, how does this trip that has taken us globally from the Vancouver in 76 to the Istanbul to 96 and to Quito 2016 and the famous UN Habitat Forum, what has emerged, what has changed, and how does this is related to the 2030 agenda. And I will end up by being maybe a little bit provocative as well. But let me start with the general idea that the Agenda 2030, as you said in the case of New York, is a global agenda. It's something that for the first time has been decided by 193 countries at the top level, the presidential or prime minister level, some years back in 2015, and represents the biggest shared human effort so far that has taken place on this globe. And this brings together two big issues. One issue is the development, and the other one is the sustainability. And on the development side, in the 90s, if you remember, there was this strong current that UNDP also pushed for very strongly, that has not been successful yet, how to shift from the idea of growth and economic growth to human development. That is the first trend that carries us to the 2030 agenda. The second trend is the sustainability, the Rio summit and what came after that. And this is a great opportunity where world leaders met and decided that economic growth is not enough, then human development is needed, and sustainable human development is needed. Now, what does have this to do with the cities? This agenda can only be carried out if it is localized. If it's localized, and we heard the data before, I will not go through it, the world, it is urbanizing at a fast speed. 55% now are living in the urban centers, will soon be 70% by 2050, according to projections right now. Cities, on the bad side, they're responsible, we heard it, 70% of emissions, 70% of waste, but on the positive side, they're also responsible for the 70% or more of GDP production. That the places for innovation, that the places for inclusion. So let's remember in history that people, and still people are doing that, our fellow citizens, people come to the cities, they urbanize themselves because they're searching for something. They're looking for opportunity, they're looking for hope. Now the question is, are cities able to maintain this hope? Are they able to maintain a level of living that is good, positive, conducive to good living and attracting additional people? That is a big question mark. So the first point I want to focus on is inclusion, how inclusive cities are. And, you know, we have seen last week and 2 weeks ago in New York during the General Assembly how the world has been turned upside down by a 16-year-old girl from Sweden. And we cannot ignore that. We cannot ignore the fact that these Fridays for Future, these strikes by youth are taking place in, right now, if I'm not wrong, 156 countries. It's almost the totality of the countries, more than 5,000 cities around the world. My point is, these demonstrations are taking place in cities. Cities are the places also for people inclusion and where people want to be heard. Are our cities still good places for this? Will they be good places for this? This is a question mark around inclusion. What actions, what policies can be carried out in this sense? Another element, the second one is, I want to highlight, is innovation. And there is a positive one. Innovation largely happens in city. It's driven by technology, it's driven by education, it's driven by young people. So the question is, how do we give space, more space, to innovation? Where this innovation will lead us? Will lead us to smart city, to less polluting city, to better transport, to more green areas in the cities. So innovation is definitely an area that maybe in the second intervention I would like to go a little bit deeper into. But the third one, I think is probably the most important, is the integrality. The moderator mentioned before the SDGs. I mentioned there are 17 of them. There is actually one, the number 11, that is fully dedicated to cities. But the point is the Agenda 2030 has a big, important lemma, which is leave no one behind. And leave no one behind can only happen if the policies that are carried out are integral. What you were asking right now, are we predicating decentralization? Is urbanization bankrupt? I don't think so. I think it's like really a mix. The question is rather how national and local policies work together for the citizens. And going to the next step, is urbanization necessarily the big mega trend that will have to stay for the future to come? Or maybe a correct mix of national and local policy can lead to de-urbanization? Because we were saying it before, people are coming to cities in search of opportunities and hopes, and that is a right thing to do. But is it possible to provide opportunities outside cities, in small towns? This requires services, of course, education, health, but maybe technology and innovation can work in favor of that. Let's think about it. How is it possible for people to stay in smaller towns, in rural areas, and prosper, and have good level of services, and contribute to society from there? This is not to say that urbanization is not right, but I'm questioning for the future, this projection for 2050 and beyond. Will it be maintained? We will be really in the presence of huge mega cities in the world without turning back? Or is there another way by finding a joint solution? And this leads to my last point for this first intervention, which is, I think you mentioned, the SDG 17 about partnership. Cities are the perfect place to harness partnerships. And the SDGs is very clear, has been said from the very beginning, cannot happen alone. It's not a matter of governments wanting to achieve SDGs. It's not a matter of civil society. Without private sector, without the driving sector in society, it's not possible to reach the SDGs. Somebody before was talking about there's something wrong and there is a need for transformational agenda. Definitely. And this can be done only in partnership with private sector. So this is a call for all of us to partner together, for private sector to step up to the Agenda 2030 and to the SDGs in order for citizens to reach it. And the very last point, probably, when you were saying funding is one of the issues when citizens are asked that prevent cities management from being successful. Well, that is true for cities, but that is true also globally for the Agenda 2030, for the SDGs. It is estimated that every year what is needed is around $4.5 trillion globally to reach the SDGs. And right now there is a 2.5 trillion gap. So if we are good with math, it means that we're having less than half every year available to do that. How do we get that? That is a mix. That is a mix of investment, that is a mix of loans, that is a mix of international cooperation, that is a mix of private sector commitments. So let me finish with this point, and I will look forward for questions and for the second opportunity to go deeper into some of these issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Tomasi. By the way, I should reiterate, we have started receiving questions. We can see them from here. You are more than welcome to ask our panelists questions. Now, Mr. Tomasi made some very important remarks. He talked about innovation. As someone who is a Turkish aficionado, it bothers me that the word innovation, inovasyon, in Turkish has a place. I mean, if we left it to our people, they would find a word for it, but when you leave it to a handful few, they can't come up with it. So, innovation and solutions, well, the youth creating solutions to urban problems and giving them the means to do that must be an important motto in all this. And I should remind you, this budget issue, in a global sense, 25% of municipalities actually can get by their own means. That's quite interesting and actually not a bad number in my opinion. Now let's move on to, well, Mr. Tomasi does not directly agree that urbanization has gone bankrupt. Local governments and central administration dilemma, well, in that dichotomy, he mentioned the right mix, as I've noted. There's an international organization called Metropolis, which I found out about here. Ota Videla Varga, we must ask Mr. Varga, why is it not better known? Why isn't there good awareness? I actually had to ask my colleagues what Metropolis was. Metropolis is an international organization created by major cities, if I've been informed correctly. Now, Mr. Octavio de Varga, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. And thank you very much to the Marmara Municipalities Union to invite me to this first forum. And there will be then an opportunity for you to know much about Metropolis. In fact, we had an old history. We were created in 1985. And it's interesting because at that time, I think most of the issues that the founding members were discussing had really nothing to do with what we are facing right now. At that time when we decided, or they decided, because I wasn't there, to create a Metropolis, they were thinking about major cities and metropolitan areas, and they considered that a major city and metropolitan area was a space of more than 1 million inhabitants. Now, a city of 1 million inhabitants around the world, especially in certain regions like Asia, Africa, or Latin America, is a medium-sized city. I mean, a big city, it's over 3 million inhabitants, 8 million, 10 million. And taking into account all the discussions that with the previous panelists, is that I agree that I don't think that urbanization is bankrupt. The point is we're right now facing certain complexities that so many years ago we didn't need to face when we were planning cities. And one is historically, and as it's been said, cities have been always a point of innovation, of development, of freedom, of culture. Cities have been always the engines for nations to move forward. But what's happening right now is that there is a paradox. cities are still this. Cities are still the places for innovation, is where everybody wants to go because there are opportunities for employment, for education, but at the same time, cities are producing lots of externalities. And these externalities in the past were not as strong as they are right now. It's been quoted, issues like the cities are the ones which are producing 70% of the emissions, there's 80% of waste, they're consuming 80% of energy, etc., etc. There are places where as well issues of safety are taking place. There are many, many contradictions between that. So cities, as I said, there are opportunities, and they can contribute to the well-being of humanity, but at the same time, they are confronted to most of the more challenges, the most important challenges that we need to face right now. So that's one of the issues of complexity that sometimes we don't really take into account, and leaders don't take really into account. The second one is about who. Who is deciding the city? Who is designing and deciding the future of the city? In the past, traditionally, it was urban planners. We always talk about urban planners, architects, engineers. I remember 2 years ago, I was in a conference in Madrid, and there was this man sitting next to me saying, "Oh, that's so weird. I'm an architect, and some years ago, we were only architects and urban planners discussing issues about city. And now here around, you have civil society organizations, human rights organizations, lawyers. You are talking about social cohesion. You are not longer talking about infrastructures. Of course, we talk about it, but you are also talking about policies. So it's not only about the hard part of the city, but also the soft parts of the city. And this adds another complexity because it makes us to think in a different way. It's not only about roads, airports, and harbors, which are important, but as well about which kind of policies, which kind of city you want to develop for your citizens. The third point, I think, we are confronting right now is the international agendas, and not only the Agenda 2030 and the new urban agenda, which are critical for cities, but all the international agendas that have been developing lately. They put, to a certain extent, cities at the center of the problems, but as well, they put a lot of pressure on cities to deliver solutions. I mean, and my colleague said about this idea of localization. At the end of the day, achieving all the SDGs, not only SDG 11, which is the one specific for cities, but the other SDGs are as well on the hands of cities. And that's new because that means as well that city leaders, city planners, they need to take into account all these agendas. And this also the Paris agreements on climate change, the Sendai agreement on risk, on facing risk, etc. And this is new as well. The fourth point will be that the transformation, cities are in constant transformation right now. And someone mentioned before, there's a speed, no? There's kind of a speed going on in cities all the time, which keeps us, all the ones who are in the city business, it makes us to be difficult to be up to what's going on. And this transformation as well is related to an idea that we no longer know where the city borders end. Traditionally, we've been talking about this debate between urban and rural, and I think this debate shouldn't be confronted like that, rural versus urban. It's like in many areas of the world, we no longer know what we are talking about. Even the traditional administrative boundaries, the legal institutional boundaries are no longer useful, if I may say like that. In fact, if I talk about metropolis, we were very clear when it was created, it was like capital, major cities, and metropolitan areas. But right now, in our membership, we no longer know how to talk about the metropolitan issue. We have mega cities, we have metropolitan areas, we have metro cities, we have megalopolis, we have city regions, province regions, etc. So it shows us this complex reality and interrelations. In fact, even in a metropolitan area where you can have a big city, which can be the capital of this metropolitan area, you need to look at the links between all the territory. We need to look at the impact that these metro spaces, that these cities are having beyond their boundaries, and how they relate to their hinterland, to their own region, and to the nation state. In terms, I will give you two clear examples that they always shock to me. In the case of Seoul, the metropolitan space of Seoul, South Korea, lives 50% of the Korean population. That has an impact not only for Seoul, it has an impact for the entire nation. It's the same in Latin America, for example, in Argentina, in Buenos Aires, 33% of the population of Argentina lives in the metropolitan space of Buenos Aires. So the problems of Buenos Aires are not only the problems of Buenos Aires, they are the problems on the entire nation. In terms of GDP, it's the same. We have realities, like from a country I'm coming from, two cities or two metropolitan spaces, Madrid and Barcelona, they add up to 22% of the GDP of Spain. And I could show you more examples, but that means that we need to think in terms as well of urban systems. And there are so far in many nations that they don't have clear urban policies to tackle that, and as well to look at these territorial imbalances. And I think as well, this is the final issue is about the metropolitan spaces right now. I think they are the disruptive actor because of all these issues, as I said, in terms of economic weight, in terms of population, in terms of the externalities that they are producing, and as well because of sometimes their political weight as well within the nation. And we need to take into account in order to find solutions. In metropolis, I will be that my final point. I'm really happy that I'm hearing all these days, and I've seen in the program, that we're talking about governance. Because for us in metropolis, this is a critical issue that we need to tackle. Without governance, we won't be able to face and find solutions to all these complexities. And we understand governance on the basis of 5 pillars. One is political leadership and vision. We need leaders that can think ahead and not in a partisan way, and that have a vision of their own territory, that they know where they want to be, where they want their city to be in certain time. The second one is about having institutional and legal frameworks to work in a metropolitan spaces, in areas of city areas. The third one would be the resources, finding resources. That will be, we need funding, we need money to transform and to develop policies. Cities need funding. But at the same time, here there is a paradox, because some people say that the money is out there, especially if we work with the private sector, but there are not projects. And then you have cities say, no, we have projects, but we don't know how to find the money. So here as well is one of the challenges that we need to confront. The fourth one will be having the expertise, having the technical expertise in our institutions. Do we have teams that are able to work in a different way, that we can no longer work in silos? We need to work for a more mainstreaming approach to city development. And the final one, and it's important, is citizens' participation. We cannot develop the city, if we don't take into account citizens. Citizens should be at the core of the development of the cities. Thank you.
Bay De La Varga, teşekkür.
Thank you very much, Mr. De La Varga. About inclusiveness, I had made a note of that at the beginning as well, but you mentioned it as a separate topic because you brought up the question who is making the decisions in the city. And also, I think, I personally very liked your finding that it is the cities that need to take on the responsibility of realizing the SDGs. And about the borders, we have that issue in Istanbul. I'm pretty sure our other mayors experience that as well. A Bursa metropolitan municipality mayor is also in charge of the infrastructure that goes to a very remote village. And also the interregional connections. The Istanbul Metropolitan Municipality is able to help the problems of the Van municipality, for example, which is on the exact opposite side of Turkey. Or, the Balıkesir municipality can end up helping a municipality of a less developed district. So I mean, we can name these micro examples of how local governments are changing worldwide. So let's go back to our mayors, Sakarya Metropolitan Municipality Mayor Ekrem Yüce, and there are questions about the earthquake and measures against the earthquake threat. This issue has not been tackled yet. I'd like to remind you of that, please. The floor is yours. Distinguished General Director, distinguished mayors, distinguished international guests and participants, and dear members of the press, I would like to wholeheartedly greet all of you. And I would like to thank everyone who put an effort into organizing this great event. And I believe that this event will provide contribution to the common issues local governments are facing. Today, more than 60% of our population is living in urban cities. And despite the fact that for many years we have a greater urban population than rural population, we still face some urbanization problems. The insufficient infrastructure and superstructure and the transport problems and unplanned urbanization have become a problem. And I believe traffic is directly connected to the development level of a city as well. Farabi says the state is a union that can provide its own happiness, its own maturity, and the local governments are what enable this. So we all need to make progress in cultural development as well. And as part of the 10th development plan, qualified people create a strong society, and a strong society creates a strong state, and the strong state then creates strong cities. And I think we need to pioneer activities that prioritize daily life and culture. Without a common city culture, infrastructure, superstructure, transportation, all activities in these areas will be insufficient if we don't have these grounds. So when creating an urban culture, we need to focus on the services that are provided by municipality. The services need to be efficient in remote areas as well. And these services, the equal opportunity to access services, will enable development. To be able to create an urban vision, what kind of data do we need? Well, first of all, we need to understand the qualities and characteristics of that specific city. So the geographical, topographical, and economic conditions of a city need to be taken into account. And the cosmopolitan structure of our cities, population, geography, all these qualities need to be accurately identified, and we need to then create smart cities in line with these qualities and in line with today's world. And I would like to thank the Marmara Municipalities Union once again on behalf of the Sakarya municipality, because we believe that vertical architecture is the most important component for the city, so it is harmonious with the human desire, and living standards need to be high. We need to create information centers. We need to have collaboration with universities. Sports events cannot be ignored. A city, to be able to develop, to be able to become a brand city, we need to be hand in hand and contribute to all of these social, cultural, economic, and developmental levels between different cities should be overcome, and the local common needs need to be met. Quality, solution-focused problem-solving methods need to be adapted, and we need to respect the environment as we are creating social living areas. And in this way, we can live as brothers and sisters in peace and with a deeper meaning to life. I believe that we need to all work together because it is all of our responsibility to create this, and I hope this session will prove to be auspicious. Thank you.
Sayın Başkan,
Mr. Mayor, I guess you can see the countdown, so I'd like to thank you for your sensitivity for the time. But I mean, I don't want to be misunderstood by the other panelists. I know it is never an easy thing to accomplish. Now, I'm going to see if we can actually complete a second round. We're going to try. So, Mr. Yüce, the mayor of Sakarya Metropolitan Municipality, emphasized another important issue. I mean, it is something that we know, but he emphasized it again, migration and about cultural development. He mentioned that back, I mean, he talked about cultural development, but before, municipalities didn't have such a responsibility. I mean, yes, they would, build theaters maybe, or create theater teams and organize concert events, but that would be it. But now it's different. And Sakarya was one of the cities that was vastly impacted by the earthquake of 99. So I would like to ask you that question. I mean, how much reinforcement was made in terms of, building the city? I mean, it was horrible, the images that we saw back then. I mean, initially, the city was built in the wrong place, wrong position, basically. But yes, I don't want to extend my words too much. And we have another very valuable mayor of the Marmara region, Mr. Yücel Yılmaz. Yes, distinguished guests, participants, dear guests, being the final speaker is a little challenging, and the countdown isn't reset. We need to reset that. The 21st century urban vision topic is a very wide topic, and I am a mayor that also follows the 17 SDGs, and there are differences between there are year differences in different countries, they used to say, like, say, between Turkey and Germany, 20 years difference in development, or between Germany and Russia, so many years. So in terms of the perspective of leaders between cities and the raison d'etre, there are different. For example, legislation preparation there in Turkey is updated all the time. Now, Balıkesir is a city that I wake up to every morning saying, thank God I live here. I mean, if I go towards the left, I can swim in the Aegean. If I go towards the right, I can swim in the Marmara. If I want to go along the coast, I can go and eat fish. If I want to eat a nice lamb, I can then go to Manyas, and I can invite everyone. Also, those who are scared of the earthquake can come. And managing the city is not so challenging for us, but meeting the basic needs of the city are a little challenging to some extent because I am living in a city that is 3 times bigger than Istanbul, and we have 1.3 million people living there. And in the summer, this goes up to 4 million. So with the income of 1.3 million people, we are trying to host 4 or 5 million people in the summer. So our city doesn't have major challenges, but we're trying to transform our city into a universal city, a city at universal standards. And we had a survey conducted, a research conducted because we want inclusiveness. And 7% are saying, don't touch my city. I like my city just the way it is. I like the building heights. I like the roads. So as a municipality, just make sure water is running through the taps, but don't, use your imagination too much on the city. Leave it the way it is. And this is basically the people who have moved from Istanbul after retirement who are living on the coasts because they came and liked it that way. But we also have a dynamic life. And what we do is, and our political party actually encourages this, we like inclusive local governance. So, and we always say we should plan well because it's not up to us to educate people. These people have known how to live throughout many years. They have their own traditions. And don't try to dictate things to them. They will tell you what to do. So, I mean, if the mayors take an outlook where they focus on trying to develop the people, that's not right because they're the boss. They're the ones who are electing us. We shouldn't treat them as clients. They are the ones that need to be heard. So we need to listen to them well. And secondly, to give you an example from myself, I am the youngest son of a family who traveled to Germany as a worker. And once my father retired, we came back to our homeland, to our village. We are 4 siblings. And our primary school teacher said, these children are intelligent, take them to the city. They will be wasted here. So we moved to the center of Balıkesir. And then for education, first my brothers, and then I leave our home. And I started making bread money in Istanbul after I graduated from university in Istanbul. But then dad got sick, and I was the one to return back home because I was the only one who wasn't married yet. But then I started making my bread money there as well. And just when I was going to go back to Istanbul, the road to becoming the mayor opened up, and I stayed in Balıkesir. Now, the things that people do to themselves, no one else can do it. I mean, if you want to suffer from the traffic in Istanbul, go ahead and do so. But if you want to enjoy the nice weather and calm in Balıkesir, then come over. If you want to take risk during the earthquake, then yes, live in those big skyscrapers. But if you want to be at peace with that as well, come where we have vertical architecture towards Anatolia. So as a mayor, my personal opinion is I must complete my term as a mayor that doesn't damage his city. So one of my most important mottos is to not do any harm to my city with the decisions I take. That comes first. And then secondly, I focus on contributing to its development. Now, we are living in a city as people who have come from very diverse areas and cultures. And for all those people to live together in harmony, despite their differences, well, it's the local government's duty to enable that. And I believe cultural activities are very important for that as well. So we need to allocate the accurate amount of budget for that as well. And in rural areas, as we focus more on the human interaction, in the metropolitan cities, we don't really focus on that too much. I mean, who lives behind those door numbers? Those are important. We need to be a social municipality. I mean, as people are doing better economically and as long as they have personal freedom, when people get old, there aren't many people who will be taking care of them. So that's why we need to take care of them, and we really need to undertake projects that support a social municipality. And we have some retirement, or we need to increase the amount of retirement homes that work like the almshouse, the Darülaceze institution. Since the elderly cannot live on their own, we need to focus on this. And as Balıkesir, we are preparing the infrastructure for this. And as a local government, another very important issue is more than ever, and Mayor Tahir showed it as well, environmental pollution. I mean, from the 90s until the 2000, it was at X rate, but in the past 20 years, it increased by 5-fold. So we need to be very sensitive about environmental pollution, and we are living in a global world. And in the infrastructure of this world, no matter how careful I am, if my neighbors, Bursa and Denizli, let's say, are not sensitive enough, because, I mean, we are all the cities around the Marmara Sea, and another mission of this Marmara Municipalities Union is to also take measures that will not allow the Marmara Sea basin to be polluted. So we need to be careful about all of this. And of course, asphalting and pavement maintenance and renewing the urban furniture, these are all the responsibilities we have anyway. And in the global world with internet and social media, people's professions are changing as well. At the Balıkesir City Center, we have 3 passages with stores inside, and they provided services very well for many years. But according to the shopping habits of today's people, these square meters need to change because people's way of shopping has changed. So renovation of such structures and broadening the vision of cities is also important. And I am a lucky mayor. We became a metropolitan municipality in 2014. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to imitate all the best practices of Bursa and avoid all their bad practices. For example, they had a lot of people coming to the organized industrial areas all of a sudden because the industrialization happened very rapidly, and it became very hard to manage. There are a lot of chaotic points. So as Balıkesir, we are very careful about this. We are acting together with all NGOs and together with all our 20 district mayors and the members of our assembly. We are carrying out nice activities focusing on this area as well. I think I exceeded my time. Why is my time never stopping? How come they never paused it? Okay, in summary, when we talk about the 21st century urban vision, all cities should draw up their destiny together with their own participants, with their own city dwellers, and our common needs like the air, water, seas In those areas, all cities need to have the same sensitivity for protection against environmental pollution. I may prefer Istanbul for entertainment and shopping, for example, but for the education of my children and for my peace of mind, I may prefer to live in Balıkesir. I mean, the options may be good. Istanbul is a beautiful city. I enjoy it very much every time I come. I spend a lot of money as well. I go around, I taste the world cuisine that is available. So Istanbul is a beautiful city. Enjoy it as long as you have the energy for it. But in Balıkesir, Bursa, Kocaeli, there are a lot of different beauties as well. So people need to understand where they want to live and how they want to live. Our economic structures are quite out in the open these days. And as a mayor, I open my doors to all of you. Thank you.
Değerli başkan, teşekkür ederim.
Thank you for your speech, Mr. Mayor. Truly an interesting one. For one, the clock wasn't reset, so it might have been perceived that you spoke for 14 minutes, but that's not the case as far as I know. But because every speaker exceeds the time limit, that is now ordinary, so we won't be able to move on to the second round. But Mr. Yücel's words in introducing his own city were different, that I would like to highlight. He's inviting people into Balıkesir for a good life and a good education. Now, I would recommend you make that promotion in broader media. So he is asking for immigration, the right decisions being made, and public participation in those decisions. That was an important point. Another important point was that the care of elderly, which is an upcoming problem in Turkey, it's important that they have the care for elderly in their vision. Now, we will move on to your questions. As I said, we won't be able to have 2 rounds. It is already 12:30. We have questions for everyone, and we hope to complete this Q&A session quickly. I'm certain you're getting hungry as well. So we've received your questions. Now, there's a question for Mayor Tahir. When you talk about the design error, did you mean decentralization, or did you have another meaning behind that? If you could briefly elaborate, because there are questions for everybody. No, it's something different to decentralization. What I said has gone bankrupt is the approach, and I reiterate, the approach is wrong. We need to revisit it with a holistic approach and a point of view. For that, you have local administration. Of course, you need some decentralized approach, but for global climate change, for example, the G7 countries are responsible for 75% of global carbon emissions, and the water is rising in Venice. What can Venice do on its own? Those who make the rules and regulations, as long as they're not subject to sanctions, you may take all the measures you like. The Venice municipality might take all the measures they want, but that doesn't matter. There's need for global action. This isn't just decentralization. You also need global action and a global action plan. Those who set the rules are the ones that do not abide by those rules. We need to discuss this globally and raise our voice. For example, what is the US going to do? G7 countries, again, are responsible for 75% of carbon emissions. Will we not talk about this? That is what I'm trying to say. When cities become this large, social participation, or we talk about a lot of goals such as social inclusion and participation. Is it possible to do all of that in such a crowded city? In a city of 20 million, can you find enough parks for people? What we thought was that if we have a 2-lane road and if there's traffic there, there'll be less traffic when we add a 3rd lane, but urban planners today are saying that that's not the case. When you add a third lane, you bring additional traffic. So such a large city is not possible. It's not possible to govern. The approach is problematic. That is precisely what I mean. Now, on one hand, we have the SDGs, all well and good, great things being said. And on the other hand, we're doing something. But the thing we're doing is, well, it's contrary to the goals. For example, the mayor of Balıkesir just mentioned, we as the municipalities around the Marmara Sea have established a union. If one of them doesn't take measures towards the sea, for example, if they don't do water filtering, then how are we to protect the Marmara Sea? It's not enough to do it just in Kocaeli or Bursa. We actually need a larger scale. I say this for Marmara, for MMU. We need to work on a basin plan, for example, logistics movements. How are we going to manage it? We need to have a logistics plan at a basin level. Our transport master plans do not pertain just to cities, but 65% of lorries coming into Kocaeli, that's their end destination. There are 200,000 lorries every day. Now, without this unity, we cannot come up with a solution. There's an integration between cities and regions, and there's a relationship between regions and national level. And we need appropriate global action taken. Otherwise, a municipality by its own realizing SDGs or establishing a vision to accomplish the SDGs bears no weight. Thank you, Mr. Werner. Of course, we received questions about the earthquake, many questions. There's questions to mayors of Sakarya and Kocaeli, because those two cities have deeply suffered the earthquake of 1999. But I will pose this as a general question to the Sakarya Metropolitan Mayor. A participant says, does everybody rely on AFAD after the earthquake? AFAD cannot handle this alone in the country. What are the municipalities doing to this end? Thank you. Well, the earthquake is an important issue for our city because we live under considerable risk. In the earthquake of 1999, I was again the mayor, then a district mayor at Erenler. I personally experienced the earthquake and have felt all its negative outcomes. My own house, I lost my own house. I left the kids outside the door and ran to the municipality to find a solution to the people's problems. Now, I was a mayor who had experienced the earthquake in its entirety, and since then, whatever was necessary has been done. Again, in Sakarya, as the metropolitan mayor, one of our top priorities is our work with AFAD, and we have a disaster coordination center where we come together with line officials to discuss Sakarya's future. And we look at how we can eliminate any negative circumstance. We've had some considerable work with regards to equipment and construction, water, roads, and sewage. So, in the event of an earthquake or a different disaster, we have worked down to, and we continue to work down to, the very most minute detail. We collaborate with the Istanbul Technical University, with professors from Sakarya University, and we continue our efforts to take all measures possible. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A question for Mr. Octavi. The participation issue is often mentioned, and prior to the latest election campaign, almost all political parties and candidate mayors put forth some promises with regards to participation, but the dust from the election, if you will, has yet to settle, and we therefore cannot witness this. But if there's anything the mayors would like to add to the issue of participation. The question is actually for Mr. Octavia. What's important in a city is to identify and follow the right policies. That is what you stated. Now, the people's well, are there means for the people to contribute to and monitor those? So they're asking for an example. For example, we know about Switzerland. They participate directly in the governance of the country itself. Well, there are cantons, of course, but is there a good example of this being done at the city level in the world?
Yeah, I think there's been, in terms of citizens' participation, there's been an evolution. Traditionally, we were thinking of citizens' participation just to be consulted. No? It was the city council was gathering some citizens, normally was neighbors associations, some groups of people, and that was okay. But normally when you do that, there are only some people, certain people who are speaking, those who are better organized, and those who are a bit lobbying the city hall. We are not evolving and seeing in some cities that they are organizing processes which is not only consultative, but also, as you said, monitoring that the policies that the City Hall has agreed to develop, that they're being accomplished. And I think there's a very good example in Bogota, for example. They have an institution that is called Vedeuría. Even for me in Spanish, it's difficult to translate it. It's a kind of, an independent actor of the city, which is appointed for a mandate which is different from the mandate of the mayor and the politicians, who controls that everything is taking place, all the agreements are taking place, and then there is an issue, they have additional an app on the mobile that as a citizen, you can walk around and you can check that, oh, there was this agreement, for example, to build this street, and this street has not been done. So you check, you take a picture, and you send to the city hall. So it's a way that you monitor and you make accountable your city hall and your mayors on what's being developed. So that's one thing. There's as well, of course, the other issue about budgeting and how to control the budget is done and how the budget is implemented. But we have all different experiences, especially we are in a new phase in many cities that is about how you involve citizens in monitoring and making the mayors and the team, the leadership in the city hall accountable.
Teşekkür ederim.
Thank you, Mr. Tavi. The next question is actually for all the mayors, but I will refer it to the Bursa Metropolitan Mayor because we do have to have fair distribution. We've received many messages from urban planners. Some have been offended because there was a comment that urban planners are not doing their jobs properly. At least that was the perception. Now the question is, the words uttered about urban planners, well, what should be said about local governments sacrificing the city in exchange for revenue rather than accepting planners who behave ethically and who work on planning principles? God knows how many urban plannings have been done in Turkey. I think of the capital, Ankara. But when the Republic was first established in the time of Atatürk, the urban plan created at the time still has left a mark that is quite interesting. In Istanbul, an urban plan was limited only around the Golden Horn, which again in the 1930s or 40s was made. But besides that, there isn't much of a plan. So, what would you say? Thank you very much. Well, cities, just like people, have a lifetime. People are born, they grow, they come to a certain age, and after a while, they pass away. And cities have a lifespan too. Cities are not shaped in a year or two. Every mistake is a threat to the future, but everything that is done right is a positive move, a correct move for the future. even though I've been a mayor for 22 months, I don't have a problem with urban planners. I've actually hired 7 new urban planners, although I had an excess of technical staff. I'm not a technical person, but because we hired them on a contract, first we have the possibility to look into their vision and their horizons. Now, an example from the city of Kayseri. And my background is in trade, by the way. I was always in the private sector. I was an industrialist. And my business is actually being managed by my partner right now. I think it was in 1998. I had a business trip to Kayseri. The streets were very wide. I had nothing to do with the municipality at the time, and I said, well, that's a successful mayor you've got. Mr. Öz Haseki was a mayor of Kayseri for 21, 22 years. He was a very successful and visionary mayor. But they said in the 50s, there was a mayor called Osman Kavuncu. And because he had a hunchback, they would call him Hunchback Osman. And he was a wild man. And he passed away at odds with his father. He was a mayor for 7 to 8 years, but he expropriated even his own father's home just to broaden the street. So the moves made in those days, you can see their traces 50 years on. So as you said, so many plan revisions and changes to the plans that we've had. And you also mentioned horizontal construction. That's an important issue for my city as well, because Bursa is a city of history and culture. It's actually on the UNESCO World Heritage List, and many spots are on that list. But it's not a very healthy approach to have no high rises at all. What's important is to have the good location and the suitable surface and ground and other environmental factors. And there's a bad example of this in our city, unfortunately. Sometimes those high rises that you construct disrupt the silhouette of the city and sometimes might eliminate historic artifacts. But of course, you have to look at the bigger picture. And I don't have a prejudice against urban planners. Just a month ago, we have brought in 7 more urban planners to the municipality by my decision. So with a visionary technical team, we also look at national and global best practices. But when it comes to the earthquake, if you'd allow me, I'd like to say something very brief. Last week, we were shaken. May it never happen again. I didn't feel it. I was in the district of Iznik, because I was in the forest villages. I didn't feel it, but my wife felt it at home. But for a week, all the TVs, all the newspapers are talking about the earthquake. We're focused on earthquakes again. I'm certain that after a while, we will forget about it yet again. For one, everybody needs to put out a clear inventory of our cities for earthquake, building by building, accompanied by seismic maps. And what resilience exists in what part of the city, we need to measure that and then come up with a roadmap on the basis of that. What is our present inventory and what is to be done as next steps? Of course, there are things that go beyond the might of municipalities. The ministry has some important work in this regard. The minister himself has been shouting it from the rooftops for urban renovation and earthquake. But I would like to remind that we need to focus on those issues once again. Thank you, sir. There's a question for Mr. Tomasi, asked in English. So I believe I will have to translate. You have your headsets, okay? How do you encourage the change and process in cities? And what is the status of financial stability or sustainability in this regard?
Well, that is such a difficult question. I will only have a complex.
If you encourage them, if you do not, you can tell the truth anyway.
No, encouragement is in line with what I said before. I do think that city issues are not exclusively the space of work or the preoccupation of administrators, of mayors, of councils. Of course, these are the people who are representing the citizens, are the most important representatives of the will in terms of how to carry out transformation. But nevertheless, everybody in the city has a say and must have a say. I was saying that the cities are a perfect place, and somebody was highlighting before, like the metaphor of city as a living being. It's true. As a living being, they're constantly moving and changing. Let's not forget that cities are the cradle of cultures and countercultures. There are a lot of contradictions. There are poor people, rich people, underdeveloped parts, very well developed parts, skyscrapers, green parks, and everything. So this is to say that a city is a microcosmos where everybody, where the citizens needs to appropriate himself or herself of these spaces and claim these spaces. So I say that there is, of course, the administrative part is very important, is key at the city level. There is the citizen participation, without which the city dies, is not alive. And again, there is also the national policies. Just now the mayor of Bursa was highlighting it. The coordination between the national policies and interventions and the local administration are the third key factor to make this change happen. Thank you.
Işıkların biraz hafifçe kararması.
Yes, we are in the final part. The lights dimming is a signal for that. But of course, my instinct as a journalist kind of remained in the backstage because my moderator hat was in the forefront. But I must ask, when all the mayors of important metropolitan municipalities are here, very briefly, please, and I'll start with the Marmara Municipalities Union Chair and the other mayors as well. Now, the mayor of Bursa said we need to pull out our inventories. Now, yes, today, even in Istanbul, we don't know how resilient buildings are to earthquakes. I mean, we don't know exactly, at least. As far as I know, it's not that bad. So actually declaring the status could be a motivation. So let me ask each one of you, how are your buildings in terms of resilience? Bursa is very close to the fault line. It's very risky. Sakarya, the fault line goes right next to it. And as, I mean, we said, this city has been built in an inappropriate place. And the best location to build a city was where the cemetery is. And unfortunately, the cemetery remained, but the old city turned into a cemetery in 1999. Well, we were at the epicenter of the earthquake of 99 together with Sakarya and Düzce. And in the earthquake of 99, only one person died because of the earthquake. It sounds weird, doesn't it? The person who fell into the crack caused by the fault line. All the rest died in the buildings. It was the buildings that killed the people, not the earthquake. We must emphasize that. Today, all the buildings in Kocaeli have been monitored and completed, and all the land studies have been completed. 2,500 buildings need to be deconstructed, and our governorate has issued a an announcement about this to vacate those buildings. So those buildings need to be vacated. But about reinforced buildings, I do believe, frankly, that we do need to have a second study to check if they are properly reinforced. So we need to look at how we can do that in the upcoming days. And as you know, the District Directorate of Environment and Urbanization is responsible for that. So this incident reminded us how important that is, and we will be looking into that. Yes, that is very important what you emphasized. Yes, the buildings that are claimed to be reinforced should be reviewed once again as well, because are some that were damaged heavily were announced as damaged as average damage, and some rented their buildings out, and they didn't think it was a bad thing. So we do need to look into that. So you, Mr. Mayor, well, last summer I had a discussion with someone who completed their master's degree in Japan and who's now working on their PhD. And I said, well, there's always an earthquake in Japan. And he said, well, it's a culture in Japan. It's very normal. Like they have lessons in schools about earthquakes. And like during earthquakes, people don't even leave their desks in the office, they say. So there are three phases to this. One is the natural background. So, I mean, you need to identify your roadmap as to how you would react when there's an earthquake. And structurally, secondly, you need to work on the land studies and the building studies. And we are at the final phase of that. So, with every earthquake, I mean, a huge reflex and a huge reaction, sleeping on the streets for days, that's not a solution. I mean, we need to adjust our reactions and we need to take our measures. And I believe as of today, there will be more significant steps taken in this direction. And as a result of these studies, we need to take steps rapidly. I mean, we may identify new areas and provide some transformation there, and our ministry is really supporting us. And also, when there's an earthquake, our Sakarya mayor talked about AFAD. I mean, AFAD exists in almost all cities. And I definitely believe that there needs to be some consciousness raising about how we need to react. Yes, thank you, Mayor. And the Sakarya Metropolitan Municipality Mayor stated that let's ask you what the situation of your building stock is. I mean, that city has already experienced that disaster, so that fault line will probably be on standby for a while, but still Sakarya is a first-degree risk area for earthquake. Yes, thank you. After the earthquake, we always had this motto where we say belongings are things that accompany your life. So we always said that rather than losing lives, we would lose votes. So that's how we took our decisions, and we didn't make any compromises from our measures. You know, there's this nice saying, life is a form of art where you paint a picture without ever using an eraser. So what we need to do is we need to draw a picture or paint a picture in such a way that it will never need to be erased. Yes, so the Kocaeli mayor talked about reviewing the reinforced buildings to see if they're properly reinforced. And I know that there was a lot of abuse in that sense in your region as well. So what do you think? Well, of course, it's not possible for me to disagree with my fellow mayor, but we need to identify those buildings. I mean, we checked each and every building. Of course, could we have missed any? Well, yes, we should look into that. So I believe we would need to re-identify the damaged buildings, the ones that were that had minor damage, major damage, the ones that needed to be pulled down. And yes, we should review what was going on. Well, if I was here as a journalist, my lead, my flash would be the cities that experienced the earthquake of 99 still need to review the buildings that were reinforced after that earthquake. So Balıkesir, although it seems to be away from this fault line, there it has its own fault lines, and it is a risky area. So what is the situation of Balıkesir? Well, about the building stock after 2001, across the entire city, from Bandırma to Dursunbey to Erdek, the modified building stock or the new building stock is only 11%. So 89% are the buildings that have been built according to the regulations before the earthquake. So we can't really call these buildings safe for earthquakes because at that time the regulations around building foundations and the regulations about making mixtures, cement mixtures, were different. So we do have a desire to deconstruct and reconstruct many of our buildings, but of course, with property rights and parcels and things like that, there are some challenges. And of course, there are some costs that come. So you can't really do urban transformation without increasing the height of buildings because our citizens don't want to reinvest in a building that has been deconstructed. So 11% of our building stock is earthquake proof, but the others are not. And as an earthquake zone from one end to the other, there is 300 kilometers between the entrance and exit of the city, and we have very different regions along that line. So these areas don't have more than 6.5 to 9.5 meters of height. So we are not very much concerned because the building heights are very low. Well, I would like to thank our mayors for voicing their frank opinions on this question as well. We have reached the end of our panel. I hope it was beneficial, and I hope all participants got a chance to state what they desired. And these were my tasks. If I fulfilled them, that would make me very happy. Enjoy your lunch. Thank you very much, our moderator, dear Osak Sever, and our dear mayors and dear guests. Thank you very much. And we were together in this very valuable session. And before lunch, let's complete our thanks. First of all, we want to thank the Marmara Municipalities Union with all of its employees, and we would like to thank our interpreters for interpreting for us, and also for and our sign language interpreter on stage as well. And after lunch, there will be 7 different sessions across 7 different halls. 250 speakers will be with you in 50 different sessions. So we invite you to lunch first of all, and then to our other halls for these sessions. And as we said, you can download the app from iOS and Android Play stores and use the app. Thank you.
Turn your magic on to me, she'd say. Everything you want is a dream away. We are legends, oh, every day. That's what she told them.